I chose to do my final project on what changes we will see in K-12 education due to the 2016 election outcome. To start off, I'm going to talk about some amendments that were passed in 2016, specifically for the states California, Colorado, Louisiana, and Oklahoma. In California, Proposition 51 was passed, which creates a school facility fund. This is funded by the sale of bonds. It would give $2 billion to California community colleges to construct and renovate facilities, along with another $7 billion for K-12 schools. Another proposition to be passed in California was Proposition 55. This measure would extend to personal income taxes for community colleges, healthcare, and public K-12 after funding was lost in the recession. The tax would apply to single tax filers who make at least $263,000 in taxable income and joint filers who make at least $526,000 in taxable income. It's predicted that the tax would generate between $4 billion and $9 billion in revenue each year. In Colorado, Amendment 72 was passed. This measure would increase the tobacco tax from 84 cents to $1.75 per pack. Of the funds generated in the first year, $17 million would go to fund for student loan debt repayment. In Louisiana, Amendment 2 was passed. This measure now allows boards of the public higher education systems to determine tuition and fees without permission from the state legislature. Lastly, in Oklahoma, the State Question 779 was passed. This is also known as the 1% sales tax. This would create a limited purpose fund for public education by increasing the state sales tax from 4.5% to now 5.5%. It's estimated that this tax would generate $615 million per year in revenue. Concerning higher education, 19.25% would go to the institutions under the Oklahoma State Regents for Higher Education. 3.25% would go to the Oklahoma Department of Career and Technology Education. And 8% would go to the State Department of Education. Now moving on to Donald Trump's vision for education. Stated on Donald Trump's website, he plans to immediately add an additional federal investment of $20 billion towards school choice. This will be done by reprioritizing existing federal dollars. He also states that he plans to give states the option to allow these funds to follow the student to the public or private school they attend. Distribution of this grant will favor states that have private school choice, magnet schools, and charter laws, encouraging them to participate. Next, he plans to establish the national goal of providing school choice to everyone of the 11 million school-aged children living in poverty. The next topic you may have heard of in the news recently, since this may greatly affect K-12 education. Donald Trump has appointed a new Secretary of Education. First off, the U.S. Department of Education is the agency of the federal government that establishes policy for, administers, and coordinates most federal assistance to education. The Secretary of Education specifically leads the Department of Education and promotes public understanding of the department's mission, goals, and objectives. The Secretary of Education is nominated by the President and also confirmed by the Senate. As a member of the President's Cabinet, the Secretary is the principal advisor to the President of federal policies, programs, and activities related to education in the United States. And here she is, Betsy DeVos, the new Secretary of Education who was appointed by Donald Trump. A little background on her: she has no education degree, no teaching experience, has never attended a public school, did not send her children to public schools, doesn't believe in or support public education, believes public school teachers are overpaid, supports for-profit education, has invested $200 million in Christian schools and organizations, has advocated to fuel money out of public education and into for-profit Christian-based education. In the past, DeVos has worked on school reform issues with her husband Richard. The two have helped push for Michigan's charter school law in 1993 and on December 3, 2002. Today, there are 25 voucher programs in 14 states. These programs allow families to take taxpayer dollars with them to pay for these private schools. Below are the states that have these programs. So what will happen now? Well, DeVos has made it clear that her interest is in promoting choice, including for-profit charters, and has even helped promote them in her own state of Michigan. DeVos will push choice programs that many see as draining resources from the traditional public school districts that educate most American school children. School choice aims to have the U.S. public education system run on market forces. School choice proponents say that charter schools and vouchers offer parents important options for their children's education, allowing them to leave their neighborhood schools in search of something better, and that traditional public schools have failed in many places. One issue that would arise in doing this deals with where the students would go, since there are not enough charters or private schools to fill the void in many areas. Also, rushing to open new schools without sufficient planning and oversight would create many problems. The students with the least resources and fewest advocates will be trapped and perhaps have nowhere to go. The next issue would deal with which students are actually being served. The choice movement is largely aimed to help students in urban areas find alternatives to troubled school districts. But many in the choice movement believe that all students, regardless of family socioeconomic status, should have the right to attend the school of their choice. Yet, this arises another problem, the problem that wealthy families could ultimately wind up with public money to send them to exclusive private schools. The third and last issue that I've chose to discuss about the expansion of charter schools deals with funding. There's a lot of fear that if there are too many traditional systems, they will not be able to sustain themselves financially because of underfunding and financial pressure from charters and voucher programs, and they will ultimately close. As it is now, voucher programs don't provide enough money for a student to enroll in a high-tuition private school without additional financial help, and thus many students using vouchers go to religious schools. In some states, some Christian voucher schools teach concepts that wouldn't even be allowed in traditional schools, such as that the earth is no more than 10,000 years old, and that dinosaurs once coexisted with human beings. Because the schools are private, they can teach that with impunity, and public dollars are paying for children to get such an education. I've decided to close with a short video about Betsy DeVos and the fears that are arising since she has become the new Secretary of Education.
Trump has nominated a woman by the name of Betsy DeVos as the Education Secretary. Now, Betsy DeVos is not a politician. She's not anyone who's had any significant experience in education. However, she is a conservative activist and also a billionaire GOP donor. To give you a little bit of information about her thoughts on education, she is a conservative activist who has quietly helped change the education landscape in many states, spending millions of dollars in a successful push to expand voucher programs that give families taxpayer dollars to pay for private and religious schools. The whole idea behind vouchers is you give people taxpayer money in the form of these vouchers that they can then use for private schools, any private school of their choice. Now, it sounds like a great idea, except it funnels public money that should be going to public schools into private schools, many of which are religious, right? So that kind of does something in terms of violating the separation of church and state because it's public money going to religious institutions, but it also guts public education, which of course leads public education to fail, and then the GOP turns around and says, look at these failing public schools, let's shut them down. Once you privatize education, what do you do with people who can't afford to pay for grade school, right? They're going to snatch those vouchers away, I guarantee it.